Hello, this video is about conflict and communication. Check yourself. Conflict management. We're going to talk about some skills to master and some guidelines to consider when thinking about how to manage conflict. So, let's start with skills to master. Attend to relationships with the level of meaning. Do not just focus on content. So, what that means is every message that is sent. So no matter if it's a text message, talking to a friend, face to face, anything, has two components: the message itself, so the content, and the relationship. So you got to pay attention to who you're talking to and what you're talking about. So if you pay attention to both, that is something that is a good skill to have. When you communicate with people, communicate in a way that's supportive. Listen, and when you do listen, you want to listen mindfully. In other words, be present in the moment and make sure you're paying attention. Put the phone down, take the earplug or the earbuds out, and focus on that person. Make sure that you're taking responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, and issues. This can be hard for some people. You also want to check your perceptions. We're going to get into that in just a moment. You want to look for points of agreement. In other words, find places where you think, okay, well, maybe we can agree on this part, but we can agree to disagree in others. You want to look to preserve the other space. If that means you want to make sure that you're not trying to embarrass the other person, you want to look for ways that you can protect their image. And think about maybe down the road how you'll feel after this conversation or conflict is over. So those are things to think about. Those are things that we need to work on maybe to be better at our managing of our conflicts. So focus guidelines to consider. Focus on overall communication systems. And so what that means is not interrupting people and responding openly. So time conflict purposely. So chronemics, what that means is um, try not to engage when one or both of you will not be fully present psychologically. So that means if you're a morning person and your partner or whoever you're having a conflict with is not, maybe you don't set up a time to discuss whatever the conflict is in the morning. That's probably not a good idea. You want to find a neutral time that works for both of you. Or maybe they have a tight schedule and you have a loose schedule, and so you're like, yeah, we'll just meet whenever. They really might need you to pencil, like to nail down a time. One of the things is you also need to discuss problems in private, not in a public forum. So here at ISU, you don't want to scream at each other across the commons or maybe the fountain or you're in your dorm, down the hall. It's best to discuss things in private. If you are limited to time and rushing, you want to make sure that maybe you discuss a different time to discuss whatever the conflict is about. Because if you're rushing, you might say something you'll regret, and that person may think that you're not respecting their time and think that you don't really care for whatever you're angry about or what they're angry about. Obviously, you want to aim for win-win. So find a way that you can both feel like you came out of the conflict, getting something out of it. You want to find a way to honor yourself, your partner, and the relationship. So no matter what type of relationship the conflict is in, find a way that you can both come out feeling like nobody got beat up, basically, and show grace when appropriate. So, in other words, choose your battles. Sometimes it's okay to say, I was in the wrong and move on. So, we all know that there's tons of reasons to fight or argue or to have conflict. Some of the main ones are just sometimes we're just emotional. sometimes our culture or upbringing is different. It can cause confusion or it can cause aggression. We've all seen how things can do that, or maybe we've had those experiences. Competition for resources is one that we may not think about, but I mean, we all are fighting for each other's time. Maybe there's not enough money. I know some couples, that's one of the main things that they argue about is money. Maybe there's not enough, or maybe one makes more than the other, or maybe you don't get enough attention, or maybe the one person needs all the attention. So interference with reaching goals. So in other words, are you keeping your partner or your friend from reaching their goals? Maybe you are um, more focused on your goals, and so it's all about you instead of maybe making it about both of you. Social norms and or rituals. So there are things that we do that we don't even think about that can cause conflict, and sometimes they're intentional, sometimes they're not. um, Thinking about if you get into an elevator with some strangers, one of the first things you do is you turn around and you face the doors, and you might look up or look at the numbers, or look at your phone. We all kind of do these unconscious things. Those are more of our natural rituals. And then intentional rituals are things that we purposely do. So some people pray at a certain time, certain places, or face a certain direction when they pray. And so there are those types of rituals. They say certain prayers, all kinds of different things that are very intentional. An intentional ritual is singing happy birthday and blowing out candles. That's a ritual. Um, that is intentional. And so if somebody does something differently, or they don't sing a song right, that is one way versus the other, people get in arguments about that. Um, of course, we can argue or have conflict over standpoints or worldviews. I think we've all seen that in the past couple years, especially. There's currently, a lot of arguments over vaccines and all kinds of stuff. We don't need to get into that. Thinking about what causes conflict in your life. Think about that. What other things cause conflict? A lot of people don't think about these things either. So here's kind of one of the answers to that is triggers and self-monitoring enhancement. So what that means is think about these things. I don't know about you, but lack of sleep for me, when I'm tired, I am cranky. It's probably one of the things that I know about myself. And so I'm like, it's probably not a good time to mess with me when I'm tired. So I know that. My husband knows that. It's probably best to stay away, or not pick on me. Some people, when their blood sugar is low, or they have it, you've heard of hangry, right? So they have low blood sugar, have a lack of food, they're just really hungry. That's a trigger for them. So you want to make sure that you are kind and careful around people like that. Not everybody's like that, but some people are. Some people need to, like, maybe when I'm hot, and I don't like to be hot at all. Some people, they're like that when they're cold. They just want to be left alone, and just give them more blankets. I'm the type of person that if I'm hot, I'm cranky. So if I'm hot and tired, look out. So everybody has, those things that are triggers for you. And as long as you're monitoring those and you know that you are, more, touchy at these certain times, that makes you a better communicator because you know and you're monitoring that and keeping an eye out for that. And you're letting others know, hey, believe it or not, like, hey, I'm pretty stressed right now and I'm really tired, so I'm pretty cranky. And that means, hey, warning, you might want to back off. Um, some people, if you look at this word cloud here, weather can make them feel, give people headaches. There's people that like certain smells, pressure, they're all triggers for different things. Their hormones might be off. Perfume, I get headaches from a lot of perfumes. Um, some people, oh, this is me as well. Limited information. I like to be in the know. And when people tell me half things and I find out more later. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? I don't like feeling that way. Some people are really what they call high face saving, or that means that they're really focused on their personal image and what they present to the world. And so if that is threatened in some way, that is a trigger for them. And so they manage their, what they wear, how they present themselves. And if somebody sees a different side of them and they start telling everybody, or they, push them to the brink and they act in a different way, that is definitely a trigger for that person. And then that is important to them and that can cause conflict. So, when you have conflict, it is, believe it or not, there's ways to find civility in it. You can find a neutral place to talk, not in like my dorm room versus your dorm room. Find a neutral place. You can establish ground rules that promote civil communication. In other words, you can say, hey, we're not going to talk, or we're not going to yell, excuse me. We're not going to call names, that type of thing. Share feelings and experiences using stories or story questions and sequential questions without interrupting. So, in other words, you know, use examples and say, "Hey, I have a couple questions." So I'm going to say, "Okay, first I want to know this, and I want to know that." And then once you ask your questions, let them answer, and then close your mouth. That can be hard sometimes. when they when they're talking and or answering your questions, listen to understand rather than to defend yourself. Ooh, that is a tough one. um, Listening to understand, so you're not waiting for your turn to jump in. That's not ready for, being civil. That is ready to fight or ready to continue the conflict. Listen to be in Keep an open mind and listen to hear what that person is actually saying, not to just ready to be jump on them. Create new awareness and understandings of one another. So, what that means is be willing to learn something new about the other person, and hopefully they will do the same. So, follow up, agree that, maybe even though you had this conversation and you feel better about the situation, maybe it's just like doesn't sit right, and there's kind of like that weird or awkward feeling. Maybe in a week or two you'd be like, hey, are we still okay? um you know I still feel like there's some concerns, or that we're not, quite meshing, or just follow up and be like, hey, are you doing okay? Because I feel like, something's still not right, or I just want to make sure we're all right. So, strategies for handling and preventing conflict. I mentioned this earlier. Choose your battles. Not everything's worth an argument. It's just not. Deal with it. Kind of the same. Choose your battles. Sometimes you just have to keep your mouth shut and swallow your pride and just walk away, believe it or not. Think it through. Sometimes it's like, okay, wait a minute, slow down. It's not worth it. And my time, my effort, my energy is not worth it either. Talk it out, not yell it out, not text it out, but actually get face to face, or, you know, um, even a phone call, and talk it out. Some people use mediators. In other words, they have a neutral party that can come and help them, focus on the task at hand, focus on the issue, and not on calling each other names or using profanity or whatever the situation is. Apologize when appropriate. It's okay to say sorry. It's okay to say that you were wrong. I don't like to admit it either, but it happens. And so you want to make sure that you know when to do that, but not overly so. Some of us say sorry all the time, and for reasons that, we didn't even do anything, but we say we're sorry. So you got to know. Work to minimize conflict. Do we always have to have conflict? Absolutely not. Like, if you're choosing your battles and thinking things through, you might be able to cut back on some of that. Work on your own communication skills. If your tone is always bitter or harsh, and then that is ending in conflict, well, you might want to work on that. Um, Avoid troublemakers as much as possible. If you are always in conflict with a specific person or maybe a personality type, avoid it. Clarify your priorities. And this goes for all different types of situations and relationships. Make sure that whoever you're dealing with or whatever you're doing, that you are clear about what is important to you. Set guidelines, same type thing. Be clear. When you are having a conflict with someone, a discussion, whatever, it's really difficult, but you need to focus on the facts and not on personal attributes or shortcomings. You want to make sure that everybody that's involved is heard, because as humans, that's all we want. We want to be acknowledged, we want to be heard, and we want to be part of a group. So make sure everybody's heard, including yourself. Approach problems with empathy, not just sympathy, but empathy. And that means literally putting yourself in that person's shoes and trying to feel what they're feeling. Choose your language carefully. Using certain terminology can supercharge an already rough situation, that doesn't need to be added. And I know it's tough when you're already struggling with the conflict. Think about the impact. Will this conflict end our relationship? Is it worth ending our relationship? Is the situation at hand and the facts and the issue, is it worth ending a relationship? What will this do long term? And if the answer is, you don't want to end that relationship and it might do that, then you may want to slow down. So real quick, what is the relationship between perception and communication? And in short, basically, it is a direct relationship. It is a one-on-one. So how you communicate with people is a direct relationship with your perception. So in other words, how you perceive people is how you will communicate with them, and vice versa. So in other words, if I walk up to someone and they have a southern accent, I might perceive them, and this is a stereotype, so forgive me, I might perceive them as country, and maybe some people think of that as slow. Now, I'm from the South, and I love country, and I love uh, the southern accent, so I'm just using this as a bad example. But like I'm blonde, so people will look at me and think I'm stupid. That's their perception. And so when they communicate with me, they might talk down to me. And so that's all based on their perception, and that affects how they communicate. There's lots of different things like that are not appropriate. And then at the same time, when you communicate with people, that affects how they perceive you and vice versa. Have you ever been on the phone with someone and you hear their voice and then later you meet that person and it's not what you expected at all? There you go. Communication affects perception. That happens to my husband a lot. Um, so I've seen that happen more times than not. So thinking about this, how does your communication affect your perception? And how does your perception affect your communication? So this is very important. Real quick, if you're wondering how your perception is affecting your life or your relationships, this is just a quick 3-step way to find out. And so step one, if let's say, I've got 2 examples here. Let's say your friend from your dormitory floor, who you believe is very outgoing, has become more reclusive or is ghosting you. So, and you're kind of concerned. So instead of like being like, what the heck's going on, or getting angry, this is what you do. You think to yourself, I wonder what's going on with so and so. I haven't seen them around lately, or they don't seem as peppy or whatever. Two possible interpretations of the behavior. So it could be that A, I've done something wrong, or B, something personal is going on and I don't know what that is. And then step three is just a request for clearing things up. So that's just, you could just go to that person. It's probably the best thing to do and just be like, hey, I noticed that I haven't seen you around very much, or we haven't talked a lot lately. Is everything going okay? Is there anything that I've done, or, and just take it slow and let them know that you've noticed they're missing and that their behavior is different and that you care. Same type thing, you walk in your room and you find your roommate trying to hide the fact that they were eating some of your snacks. So, yes, it's triggering. Um, Maybe they're low on funds. Maybe they weren't allowed to eat that at home. I know I wasn't allowed to eat sugary snacks. Not that I would steal from my roommate, but you just never know, and you don't want to assume anything. And that's what can happen. We all have different life experiences, and if you don't ask, you won't know. And that's what perception checking does. It slows you down, cuts down on assumptions, and minimizes conflict. Another thing is when you are in an argument, you can think about the pillow method. Oh, a pillow sounds good at times, doesn't it? So there are 5 areas of a pillow. If you think about it, the left side, right side, top, bottom, and then like the actual part where you lay your head. Um, so this is different positions of in a conflict. So it is possible that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. We could both be right or both wrong, or the issue just really doesn't matter, or that, you know, there might be some truth in all of that. In other words, I could be somewhat right, but also in this area, maybe I'm a little wrong. Um, and same for you, or just, who cares? Let's just move on. So, thinking about that, keep that pillow method in mind, and you might be able to laugh about some of your conflicts. One last thing that I really want to focus on here is a lot of people think hearing and listening are the same thing. Nope, they're not. Hearing is the actual auditory, sensation of your ear. And unless you're born with a deficit or develop a deficit, it is automatic. Listening, however, takes effort. So hearing is automatic, listening takes effort. Some of us really need to focus on the effort part. The other thing is to remember meanings are in the people, not the words. So we don't all have the same meaning for certain words. For example, when my son was little, he said, Mommy, you're stepping on my sausage. And I was thinking, what? I turned around and I said, Tynan, that's not a sausage, that's an ostrich. So you can see the ostrich there in the picture. So sometimes you just got to remember that we don't all think the same and we're not all the same. Thank you.